April 1815, London. The Duke of Harrington's annual ball teemed with the glitterati of the ton, the candlelight glinting off diamond tiaras and gold brocade as if the stars themselves had descended to illuminate the occasion. Such glittering assemblies were the very lifeblood of the season, where fortunes could be made and lost on the turn of a dance or the arch of an eyebrow. His Royal Highness, Prince Killian Claridge, stood at the periphery of the gathering with an expression of studied indifference that had become his hallmark. At 27, he had perfected the art of appearing both engaged and entirely removed from any social occasion. His valet had dressed him impeccably in midnight blue, his cravat arranged in the oriental style that only a man of his particular jawline could carry off without appearing ridiculous. "Your Highness appears thoroughly captivated by the evening's entertainments," drawled Lord Darlington with a sardonic lift of his quizzing glass. Killian's mouth quirked. "Indeed. I find myself quite overcome with enthusiasm." "You've maintained that precise expression of ennui for the past hour," Darlington observed. "One might almost think you displeased with the company." "Not displeased. Merely bored to insensibility." "Such accusations would wound our gracious host," Killian replied, though his eyes, a startling shade of amber that had caused many a young debutante to pen truly dreadful poetry, continued their restless survey of the room. "I am simply waiting." "For what, pray tell?" "The sweet release of death." Killian did not answer. In truth, he could not have explained the peculiar restlessness that had plagued him these 3 years past. A sense of something, or someone, missing. A phantom limb where his heart should be. The orchestra struck up a country dance, and couples formed lines down the length of the ballroom. The whirl of pastel silks and satins resembled nothing so much as an elaborate confection, spun sugar and frosting twirling in perfect time to the music. Lord Harrington materialized at Killian's elbow, flushed with the success of his gathering and perhaps a touch too much of his excellent port. "Your Highness! How gratified we are by your attendance. My daughter, Miss Harrington, is otherwise engaged for this dance," Killian finished smoothly, noting the young lady in question was already partnered with a rather eager young captain. "Most fortuitous, as I find myself fatigued by the evening's exertions." Harrington's disappointment was palpable but fleeting. "Another time, perhaps. Though I must say, there are many fine young ladies who would." A commotion at the entrance to the ballroom silenced whatever matrimonial schemes the Duke had been about to propose. The majordomo, a man whose dignity was as firmly starched as his collar, appeared to be engaged in a heated debate with someone just outside the doorway. "Most irregular," Darlington murmured, his quizzing glass trained on the disturbance. "Harrington, your man seems to be fending off an intruder." The Duke frowned and moved toward the entrance, but before he could intervene, the object of the disruption pushed past the spluttering majordomo and stepped into the ballroom. Conversation ceased. The music faltered and died. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. A woman stood in the entrance, but she was unlike any lady who had ever graced a ton gathering. Her gown, if such a tattered garment could be dignified with the name, hung in tatters about her slender frame. Once it might have been a fine silk, but now it was faded and torn, patched in places with mismatched fabric. Her hair, a rich chestnut that even neglect could not dull, had been hastily pinned up, with wayward tendrils escaping to frame a face that, though smudged with what appeared to be soot, was undeniably lovely. "Outrageous," someone whispered. "A madwoman," another voice suggested. "Fetch the constable," a matron commanded. But the prince moved not at all. He stood as if transfixed, his face drained of color, his eyes wide with disbelief. For her part, the bedraggled woman paid no heed to the shocked murmurs. Her gaze swept the room with a curious mixture of determination and desperation until it locked with Killian's. In that moment, something electric passed between them, recognition, relief, and something deeper that neither time nor circumstance had managed to extinguish. "It cannot be," Killian breathed. "Annabelle." The name fell from his lips like a prayer, and in response, the woman's face transformed. Hope bloomed across her features, chasing away the shadows of exhaustion and uncertainty. "I knew you would remember," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the stunned silence of the ballroom. And then, as if the exertion of her dramatic entrance had depleted her last reserves, "Annabelle Covington, the long-lost Countess of Meryton, crumpled to the floor in a heap of tattered silk and reclaimed dignity. The scandal sheets would later report that His Royal Highness moved with a speed that belied his usual languid demeanor, reaching the fallen woman before any other could react. They would detail, with varying degrees of accuracy, how he had gathered her into his arms with a tenderness that brought tears to the eyes of even the most jaded observers. And they would speculate, endlessly and with increasing creativity, on the nature of the connection between the prince and the mysterious lady in rags. But none could capture the exact shade of emotion that colored Killian's voice as he commanded, "Fetch my carriage. Now." Nor could they record the whispered words he spoke against her hair as he carried her from the ballroom, oblivious to the sensation they were creating. "I have found you at last. This time, I shall never let you go." Annabelle awoke to unfamiliar luxury. For a disorienting moment, she feared she had dreamed it all: the ballroom, the shocked faces, and most importantly, the recognition in Killian's eyes when he had spoken her name. But the evidence of reality surrounded her: a bedchamber appointed with a magnificence that suggested royal residence, soft linens that smelled of lavender, and her own body, scrubbed clean and dressed in a nightgown of the finest lawn. "You're awake." The voice came from a chair near the fireplace, where Killian sat, his cravat loosened, his hair rumpled as if he had been running his hands through it repeatedly. "So it would seem," Annabelle replied, her own voice rough with sleep. "Though I confess, I half expected to wake in a gale cell for my disruption of the Duke's ball." "Harrington would not dare," Killian said, rising and approaching the bed with careful steps, as if afraid she might vanish if he moved too quickly. "Not when I made it clear you were under my protection." "Your protection?" she echoed. "How very gallant of you, Your Highness." "Killian," he corrected, seating himself on the edge of the bed with a caution that made her heart twist. "You used to call me Killian when we were alone." "That was a lifetime ago." 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days, he countered. "Not so very long, in the grand scheme of things. Long enough for circumstances to change irrevocably." His eyes, those remarkable amber eyes that had haunted her dreams across oceans and continents, searched her face with an intensity that stole her breath. "Where have you been, Annabelle? What happened to you?" She looked away, unable to bear the weight of his gaze. "It's a rather tedious tale. I have developed a surprising tolerance for tedium in your absence." A reluctant smile tugged at her lips. "Still so persistent. In matters of importance, always." He reached out, hesitated, then gently took her hand. His touch was warm, solid, a reminder that this moment was real. "Please, Belle. I thought you dead." The old endearment, spoken with such raw emotion, cracked her resolve. "I nearly was, several times over." And so she told him. Of the shipwreck off the coast of Portugal that should have claimed her life. Of washing ashore, half-drowned and entirely alone, with no papers, no money, and no means to prove her identity. Of the years spent working her way across Europe, as a laundress, a sempstress, a companion to an elderly Spanish countess who had shown her the first kindness since her supposed death. "I wrote to you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "As soon as I was well enough to hold a pen. And again from Madrid. And once more from Paris." "I received nothing," Killian said, his grip on her hand tightening. "Had I known you lived, what would you have done?" Annabelle asked, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. "You were betrothed to Lady Caroline when I left for Portugal. I assume you are married now?" A curious expression crossed his face. "You truly don't know?" "Know what?" "I never married Caroline. The engagement was broken within a fortnight of the news of your ship's loss." Annabelle stared at him, disbelief warring with a treacherous hope. "But the alliance was so advantageous." "Your father was furious," Killian acknowledged with a wry smile. "But even he could see that I was in no fit state to marry anyone. Not when I was half-mad with grief." "You grieve for me?" The question emerged smaller than she intended. His laugh held no humor. "Did I grieve? Belle, I became a ghost myself. Ask anyone who knew me before and after. I existed, but But I did not live. I did not know, she said softly. How could you? But now you are here. His free hand moved to cup her cheek, and she could not help but lean into his touch. Against all odds and reason, you have returned to me. I have returned to England, she corrected gently. To reclaim my inheritance and my name. The rest cannot be as it was. Killian's expression hardened. Because you no longer feel as you once did. Because the world will not allow it, Annabelle replied. Look at me, Killian. I arrived at the Duke's ball in rags, causing a scandal that will reverberate through the ton for months. I have no fortune, no family remaining, and a title that I may struggle to claim without proper documentation. And you are a prince. I care nothing for such distinctions. But society does. Your family does. My family believed you perfect for me when you were the wealthy Countess of Meryton, Killian said. Your worth was never in your fortune, Belle. Such noble sentiments, she murmured. But we both know the reality is not so simple. Before he could respond, a knock at the door heralded the arrival of a maid bearing a tray. The girl curtsied deeply, eyes wide at the sight of the prince sitting so informally at the bedside of the mysterious lady. Thank you, Mary, Killian said, his tone making it clear she was dismissed. When they were alone again, he gestured to the tray. You must eat. The physician said you were exhausted and undernourished. Annabelle accepted the distraction, allowing him to arrange the tray across her lap. The simple meal of soup, bread, and tea was the finest she had eaten in years, but she found she had little appetite under the intensity of his watchful gaze. You're staring, she observed, breaking off a piece of bread. I feared I would never see your face again except in dreams, he replied simply. Forgive me if I find it difficult to look elsewhere. A flush warmed her cheeks. You always did have a silver tongue. Only with you. With everyone else, I am considered rather taciturn. The silent, brooding prince? I cannot imagine it. She sipped her tea, using the cup to hide her smile. You changed me, Killian said. In your presence, I found words I never knew I possessed. In your absence, they deserted me once more. The simple honesty of his statement pierced her carefully constructed defenses. Killian, I will help you reclaim your title and estate, he interrupted. There are witnesses who can attest to your identity, documents that can be recovered. Your solicitor, Mr. Fredericks, maintains your account still, he never fully believed the reports of your death. That is most kind of you. It is entirely selfish, I assure you. The ghost of his old smile flickered across his face. I want you restored to your proper place in society. So that I might be received in the best drawing rooms once more, she asked, arching an eyebrow. How considerate. So that when I ask you to marry me, as I intend to do the moment your affairs are in order, you will have no excuse about unsuitable matches to refuse me. The teacup froze halfway to her lips. You cannot be serious. I have never been more serious about anything in my life. He took the cup gently from her nerveless fingers and set it back on the tray. I lost you once, Annabelle. I will not lose you again to pride or circumstance or misplaced notions of propriety. The scandal will be tremendous, he agreed cheerfully. I look forward to it immensely. Despite herself, Annabelle laughed. You've gone mad. Quite possibly. I find I don't mind it. He moved the tray to the bedside table and took both her hands in his. I loved you 3 years ago, when you were the most sought-after heiress in London. I loved you when I thought you dead and beyond my reach forever. And I love you now, when you have nothing but your courage and determination to recommend you. The circumstances change, Belle. My heart does not. Tears pricked at her eyes. I have dreamed of hearing those words again. Then say you'll marry me. Not today, not tomorrow, but when you are ready. When you believe that I want you for yourself alone, and not for what you were or what you might become. And if I never believe it, she challenged, though her heart was already surrendering to the inevitability of loving him. Then I shall spend the rest of my days convincing you. He raised her hands to his lips. I can be remarkably stubborn. So I recall, Annabelle said softly. It was one of the things I found most vexing about you. And yet you loved me despite it. I loved you because of it, she corrected. Among many other reasons. Hope brightened his features. You speak in the past tense. Do I? She tilted her head, allowing herself, for the first time since she had washed ashore in Portugal, to imagine a future filled with joy rather than struggle. How careless of me. Killian's smile was like the dawn breaking. Might I hope that your feelings, like mine, have weathered the separation intact? You might hope, Annabelle said, her own smile growing. You might even find that hope justified. Belle, he breathed, and in that single syllable was a world of promise. May I kiss you? In answer, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, a reacquaintance after too long apart, but it quickly deepened into something more urgent, more demanding. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing unevenly. I shall take that as a yes to my proposal, Killian said, his voice rough. A provisional yes, Annabelle clarified. Contingent upon society not driving us both into exile with pitchforks and torches. He laughed, the sound rich with genuine delight. I believe we can manage the ton. Together, we can manage anything. And as he drew her into his arms again, Annabelle found that, for the first time in 3 long years, she believed in possibilities again. She had entered the Duke of Harrington's ball in rags, with nothing but desperate hope to sustain her. She would leave it with the love she had thought lost forever. Some might call it a scandal. Others would deem it a fairy tale. But to Annabelle Covington, soon to be Princess Claridge, it was simply, wonderfully, their story, ragged beginnings and all. Are you certain about this? Annabelle asked, adjusting the diamond tiara that her lady's maid had just secured to her upswept hair. 6 months had passed since her dramatic return to society, months filled with legal proceedings to establish her identity, the reclamation of her fortune, and most importantly, the renewal of her love with Killian. Tonight would be their first public appearance since the announcement of their engagement, and despite her restored status as the Countess of Meryton, she felt as nervous as she had the night she crashed the Duke's ball. About attending the Carringtons' ball, or about marrying you? Killian asked, resplendent in formal evening wear, his ceremonial orders gleaming on his chest. Because I have reservations about the former, Lady Carrington's punch is notoriously awful, but none whatsoever about the latter. Annabelle shot him a look that made him grin. About making our debut as an engaged couple. The ton has barely had time to adjust to my resurrection from the dead. Now they must contend with a royal betrothal that few will understand or approve of. Let them disapprove, Killian said, taking her gloved hands in his. Their opinions matter not at all. That's easy for you to say. You've been disappointing expectations your entire life. And enjoying it immensely, he agreed with a laugh. But if you truly wish to delay, no, she said quickly. No delays. I've lost too much time with you already. His expression softened. Then shall we scandalize society together, my love? I can think of nothing I would enjoy more, Annabelle replied, accepting his arm. Together they descended the grand staircase of Claridge House, where Killian had insisted she stay under the chaperonage of his widowed aunt until their wedding. The gossips had plenty to say about that arrangement, but as the prince had pointed out, they would have talked regardless. Better to give them something specific to discuss. Their carriage awaited, a magnificent conveyance emblazoned with the royal crest. As they settled inside, Annabelle smoothed the skirts of her gown, a creation of ice-blue silk that shimmered in the lamplight, as far from her tattered entrance attire as could be imagined. You look beautiful, Killian said, his eyes warm with admiration. Though I must confess, I fell in love with you all over again when you appeared in the Harrington ballroom in rags. Because you have deplorable taste, she teased. Because even at your lowest moment, you shone brighter than any diamond in that room. He captured her hand and raised it to his lips. Your courage that night humbled me. It wasn't courage, Annabelle admitted. It was desperation. I had tried every proper channel to establish my identity, but without funds or connections, I was invisible. That ball was my last hope. Then I am grateful for your desperation, Killian said. Without it, we might never have found each other again. The carriage rolled to a stop before Carrington House, its windows blazing with light, the sound of music and laughter spilling onto the street. Footmen rushed to open the door, and Killian descended first, turning to offer his hand to Annabelle. She took a deep breath and placed her fingers in his. Whatever awaited them inside, whether acceptance or rejection, approval or disdain, they would face it together. That knowledge gave her a confidence she had never known before, even in her previous life as a celebrated beauty. The majordomo's voice rang out as they entered, His Royal Highness, Prince Killian Claridge, and the Countess of Meryton. All eyes turned toward them. There was a moment of breathless silence, followed by the rustle of silken whispers as the assembled guests bowed and curtsied. Lady Carrington hurried forward, her face a careful mask of delight that did not quite hide her calculating assessment. Your Highness! Countess! How delighted we are by your presence! The pleasure is ours, Killian responded smoothly, though Annabelle felt his fingers tighten around hers. Your gatherings are always the highlight of the season. You are too kind, Lady Carrington simpered. Though I must say, we were also astonished by the announcement of your engagement. Such a romantic tale, why, it's like something from a novel. Life often surpasses fiction in its improbability, Annabelle said with a serene smile. Would you not agree, my lady? Before Lady Carrington could formulate a response to this gentle rebuke, Lord Darlington appeared at their side, his quizzing glass in place. Your Highness! Countess! How gratifying to see you both looking so well. His shrewd gaze took in their clasped hands and the protective stance Killian had adopted. I was just saying to Lady Darlington that the ton has grown unbearably predictable of late. We are in your debt for providing such delicious fodder for conversation. Killian's lips twitched. Always happy to be of service, Darlington. I particularly enjoyed the part of the story where you carried the Countess from the Harrington ball in your arms, Darlington continued, his eyes twinkling with mischief. Most dramatic. The ladies have been swooning over the retelling for months. The reality was far less romantic, Annabelle said dryly. I believe I was leaving a trail of dirt across the Duke's pristine floors. Details, my dear Countess, are often improved in the telling, Darlington replied with a wink. Now, might I suggest you proceed to the dance floor with all haste? The vultures are circling, and while I find your direct manner refreshing, you might wish to limit the number of intrusive questions on your first outing. With a grateful nod, Killian led Annabelle toward the dance floor, where the orchestra was striking up a waltz. As he took her in his arms, she felt the tension in her shoulders ease for the first time since they had entered the ballroom. Breathe, he murmured, guiding her into the first steps of the dance. The worst is over. Is it? I feel as though we're being dissected by 100 pairs of eyes. We are, he agreed cheerfully. But they can look all they like. What matters is this, he drew her a fraction closer than propriety strictly allowed. You and me, together at last. Annabelle relaxed into his lead, allowing the music to sweep away her anxiety. I never thought I would have this again, she confessed. There were days in Portugal, in Spain, when I was certain I would die a stranger in a foreign land, with no one to mourn my passing. I would have mourned you, Killian said, his voice rough with emotion. I did mourn you, even without a body to bury or a grave to visit. Every day without you was a kind of death. And now? His smile was radiant. Now I am more alive than I have ever been. They whirled around the floor in perfect harmony, and gradually, Annabelle became aware of a shift in the atmosphere. The initial shock of their appearance was giving way to something else, a reluctant admiration, perhaps, or at least an acceptance of the inevitable. After all, who could deny the obvious devotion between them? I believe we are winning them over, she murmured as they passed a group of matrons who were watching them with expressions that had softened from disapproval to wistful sentimentality. I told you we would, Killian said. Though their opinion matters not at all to me. Liar, she teased. You care very much about maintaining the goodwill of society. I care about your happiness, he corrected. If acceptance by the ton will make you happy, then I shall move heaven and earth to secure it. But if you told me tonight that you wished to retire to the country and never attend another ball, I would have the carriage ready by morning. The music drew to a close, and they stood for a moment, reluctant to break their embrace. Around them, the crowd seemed to hold its collective breath, watching to see what would come next in this most unexpected of love stories. Killian bowed over her hand. "Thank you for the dance, Countess." "The pleasure was mine, Your Highness," Annabelle replied, her curtsy deep and graceful. And then, with a boldness that sent a ripple of shock and delight through the assembly, the prince raised her hand to his lips, his eyes never leaving hers. "And thank you," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the hushed ballroom, "for returning to me against all odds. I shall spend the rest of my life ensuring you never regret it." A sigh swept through the crowd, as effective as a benediction. In that moment, Annabelle knew that they had won, not merely tolerance, but the blessing of a society that, for all its rigid rules and petty judgments, could still be moved by a love strong enough to transcend death and distance. "I never shall," she promised, her smile blossoming like the first flower of spring after an endless winter. "How could I regret finding my way home at last?" And as Killian drew her arm through his, leading her through the parting crowd toward the terrace where they might steal a moment of privacy beneath the stars, Annabelle reflected that life, like the finest novels, sometimes did provide the most satisfying of endings, even for a lost countess who had entered a ballroom in rags and found, against all hope and reason, that love had been waiting for her all along.